Yeah, I'm Natasha, and this is my coworker Levi, and we're here to talk to you first a little bit about Linux publishing in Unity 4.0. We're happy to see you guys here, the last few standing at the end of the 3 days. Yeah, should we just get started?
Let's begin.
All right, so today's presentation, we're going to give you a little bit of an overview of the technical aspects of the export feature that you can see in Unity 4, and we're also going to talk to you a little bit about the mechanisms you need to use to actually package your games to get them into the hands of developers. And then probably what will be most interesting for all of you is we're going to talk to you a little bit about how you can make some money. So yeah, first of all, technical details. So yes, in Unity 4, we're providing the option to export to Linux standalone, both 32 and 64-bit. We are specifically targeting Ubuntu desktop systems version 10.10 or later. And we're also targeting systems that have a graphics driver that's going to provide hardware acceleration. Exporting is very, very easy. It's basically the same as exporting for Windows or Mac standalone. You can see that in Unity 4, the platform has been changed from PC and Mac standalone to PC, Mac, and Linux, and now there's Linux 32 and 64-bit options in the target platform. Simply pick one of those, click Build, and you will be provided with an executable and a data folder next to it, very much the same way that we do our Windows standalone builds. And yeah, it's as simple as that. Now, once you have this, the next thing, of course, you're going to want to do is package it in some way that Linux community is going to actually be able to consume it. So I'm going to turn that over to Levi.
Hello. So how to package your game for Ubuntu. It is really, really, really easy. You just let Canonical do it. Canonical offers a free packaging service on their website. Basically, you go to developer.ubuntu.com. You sign up, and basically you export your Unity player. You send them a zip file with that in it. You fill out a web form with like who you are, your website, like what license, what pricing you want, stuff like that. And that's it. They do all the work for you. It's amazing. And now I'm just going to go over a little bit of overview of like what's actually happening there. Like what do they do once they take it from you? So the first thing you need to do to package your game is, of course, prepare your game for packaging. So you build your player, you make your icons. They recommend 64 by 64 at least, but they have like, of course, different standard powers of 2 for like whatever. And there's also, yeah, and so there's some metadata involved basically. When you build a package for Ubuntu, there is like a control file that holds all of your metadata. And so this is the stuff that you won't be having to worry about, but some background. And so it describes what kind of package your game is, like what dependencies it has, what your home page is, license, all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And the other thing that they do is like certain packaging systems have certain like incompatibilities. For example, Unity default resources, a file that we all know and love, of course has spaces in the file name. And so like a lot of installers don't handle this nicely and whatever. And so like, and of course, if you have like models or assets, other stuff, whatever, with strange file names or that need to be, handled specifically, like they script up like some pre and post install scripts to handle that all for you, so you don't have to worry about it. The other thing is, on Linux, it's not as common, like we don't have an icon embedded in the executable like we do with the Windows app, or deep inside like the app folder like we do on OS X. What you have is like a separate launch file that kind of tells the system, okay, this is my app, this is what kind of thing it is, here's a little description, here's the icon I want you to use, all that stuff. And you can see I built a sample one for CrazyQ1D. Yes, the star of our awesome 1D framework. And that's about it. Are there any questions so far? All right, in that case, we're gonna, is what free? Yes, free of charge, completely. So there's absolutely no reason not to take advantage of it, really. Yes?
Quick question. When you say you have to rename the default path because it's got spaces in it, does that mean that it won't work with spaces at all?
No, it does. Like if you're building this package yourself,
Yeah.
like this is something you have to worry about. But if you're just sending it to Canonical, like this is something that they handle for you.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, it like when you build the player, it just works out of the box. So like just like a Windows app, if you just want to zip it up and send it to a friend or like whatever, it's perfect.
Okay, thanks.
All right, let's start talking about distribution.
All right. So I'm sure it's very interesting for all of you to find out what ways can you make some money on Linux. We're going to talk about a few different distribution methods that are available. Since we're targeting Ubuntu and we're kind of partnering a bit with Canonical on this, the first distribution method that we're going to talk to is the Ubuntu Software Center, and we're lucky enough to have a guest speaker who's going to go through this part with us.
John Pugh, come on down.
Thank you very much. So I'll jump up here real quick just to get in it. So my name is John Pugh. You may have come to our session earlier, but real quick and simple. One thing to keep in mind is before we even get to distribution is don't hard code your paths, because we like to put everything in /opt, and so we'll move things around if that happens. But regardless, if you go to the Ubuntu Software Center, you go to myapps.developer.ubuntu.com, or just go to developer.ubuntu.com, register if you haven't already. If you have a Launchpad ID, just use that Launchpad ID to sign in. And once you're registered and signed in, the submission process is very, very simple. We need a few bits of information, some icons, the tagline, a price. It's free if you wanted to do free as well. We have a minimum price of $2.99 in the center. And then once you have everything submitted, upload your tarballs, and if you want to do 32 and 64-bit, just package them, just put them together in one big zip, and our service on the back end called Package Me will take care of it after you're submitted. After it gets submitted, the back end takes care of everything, does all the packaging for you. We review the application real quick just to make sure everything's working okay from a packaging perspective, and then return it back to you. You click a button, it's published. The process takes a little bit of time just because we need to verify the packaging process, because it does get complex in some of the applications. And then once it's packaged and up and ready to go, it comes back to you. You'll get notified via an email. You log into your account, you click publish, and off it goes. You're making money. So in that point, you're gaining access to roughly 20 million new users from within Ubuntu. And that's about it. Any questions on that? It really is that simple. Go to developer.ubuntu.com, sign in, submit your app, we'll review it, you publish it, you're making money.
What's the rev share?
Rev share is 80-20, so we'll take 20%, and that's after taxes. We'll take care of all the tax stuff for you, and we'll pay you 80%. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Are there any limitations on the type of content? When you say you review it, it's not for some minimum approval of there's naked zombies or whatever.
So we try to, and Ubuntu is a family-oriented distribution, obviously. Everybody uses it, from my kids who are 6 to grandparents. So we like to try to keep the content sane, but we have Psychonauts in there, Bastion's in there, Limbo. So there are some graphical and have some violence, some light violence games in there. So there isn't really a limitation there. The review process really is for making sure that the package installs correctly and doesn't break anything during that process. And if it does, we go and fix it. Or if you have an issue with starting the game, or it wipes away a drive or something like that, we're going to come back to you and have you fix that and resubmit it before we go through. That's really what the review process is for. Anything else? One more. He's got a mic on his head.
What happens if the customer wants their money back?
So the refund process, and David actually talked about that a little bit, and I don't know all the details behind it. Maybe you want to grab that mic and mention the refund process?
Sure, we handle the refund process, and you'll see that in your statement at the end of the quarter on your payments. You'll see a list of refunds and the reasons. If it's a refund reason for a payment process, it doesn't come out of, we obviously give the customer their money back, but pretty standard. Is there a specific question about the refunds?
I was just wondering, if I publish to the store and it gets a lot of users, what's the support burden that, as a developer, I put on myself? Do the support emails go to me or do they go to you?
So we have a support link that's in the review, in the application, or in the fields for my app. So in the Software Center, you're going to see you'll be able to put in a support link. If it's an application issue, yes, that's going to come back to you. But if it's a payment issue or a refund issue or something like that, a Software Center issue, then when they get the package, they're going to get a little confirmation email that's going to have information on how to get that back to us. So we have a submission process too. And we can go in both directions. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, sir. Right over here. There's a couple of them. We taking too much time? Okay.
You mentioned in your last session that we can set our own price and we can put things on sale and stuff like that. Is the ability to put something on sale just lowering the price, or is there a mechanism to actually mark it as on sale, 50% off or something?
Yeah, great question. So we also have inside the Software Center, we have a capabilities of doing banners. And you have the capability, we also have a web catalog. So you can go take a link from that and market it on your websites, blog posts about it, whatever. We can also tie that to maybe some kind of special. So if you work with us, if you send an email to me, I don't know if my email's up there, it's just john.pugh@canonical.com. We can work with you to figure out some co-marketing strategies and help market the application for you as well. So does that answer your question as far as that goes? Really, the idea there is that if you want to run a special, so if you're doing something, we want to run a special, what we should do is coordinate so that we can create a banner. And we can put that banner up to get you a lot more licks and a lot more visibility. And then we can lower the price at the same time. And then that may add some additional click-through capabilities from that perspective. Hopefully that helps. There's another one right behind you. Did that answer your question, though? Okay.
Just really quickly, you might have covered this in the previous session. I wasn't there. Can you give us an example of what application like Limbo, or probably a paid-for application that was really successful? How many downloads it got?
Yeah, I don't have the specific numbers. I don't know if you got an idea, rough idea. Limbo has been actually a very popular one. So has Bastion, and our clicks. We get several 100,000 clicks, I guess that's what you would call it. I'm sorry. Downloads, thank you, and that's what we're looking for. On a regular basis. I don't know the specific numbers, and we really don't like to give that information out. But it does get a substantial number, and it's growing by triple digits every single month. So it's relatively new. The Software Center's only been available for about a year now, and we've really been hammering hard on getting everything squared away and growing the user base and getting people to understand what it is and utilize it. And so it takes a little bit of time to build that up, but we have been growing by leaps and bounds from tens of thousands now, or hundreds of thousands, and growing pretty rapidly, very quickly. Anything else? All right, thank you very much, Levi and Natasha. My name is John Pugh. Talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
All right, so moving on. The next distribution platform we're going to talk about today is Desura. Desura is a game portal currently with clients for Linux and Windows. And I believe a client for Mac is in development.
Yeah, in the works.
It's kind of an up-and-coming game portal, but it's an avenue where developers can simply get their games in the hands of people who are interested in playing them. It's very, very simple. As a user, you log in, you can browse and search for the games that you're interested in playing, and you can purchase and install it and start playing it as soon as you find it. Bit more information that's interesting for developers like you guys. Although it is an up-and-coming portal, they do have about 10,000 people online at any given time. And I spoke with the founder of Desura, and he was really excited to share the fact that titles that do have Linux builds see a much, much higher number of downloads. So there's a fair amount of Unity content on Desura now, and we hope to see more, but even if you are already there, you are probably going to be interested in uploading a Linux build and getting some more downloads from that. It's fairly self-managed and very, very straightforward. You simply go to their website, fill in an account, submit your game for application, and you're basically good to go. Then you're making money. So if you're interested in this, please visit their website and apply. Then a related technology is an indie game bundle called Indie Royale. Probably most of you know, but game bundles are becoming more and more popular. It's where different games are taken and kind of collected together in this bundle that's sold for a certain price. And they have different mechanisms for, sometimes they have different mechanisms for distribution or pricing or things like that. I believe Indie Royale is one that does have a fixed price, and the fixed price, or the minimum price, sorry. And the minimum price fluctuates some depending on whether somebody pays significantly more than the minimum or exactly what the minimum is. A few more details. They actually partner with Desura for actual distribution of the games. And in combination with Desura, they have sold over 1 million games so far. They're very, very excited to get as much Unity content as they can. So you're also welcome to visit their website and apply. And then the last one we're going to talk about, the big one that everybody knows about, the Humble Indie Bundle. We've been contacted a lot about this because up until Unity 4, you guys have been blocked from participating in this. The Humble Indie Bundle is, of course, like the big bundle that is, it's a big dream for a lot of people to take part in. There's not really that much to say about it. Since the Humble Indie Bundle came out, the first one came out, they've actually done over $19 million in revenue. Starting with one of the more recent bundles, they've started partnering with Canonical for integration with the Ubuntu Software Center for easier access for Ubuntu users. I believe that the first Humble Indie Bundle that was actually integrated into the Ubuntu Software Center saw somewhere around 100,000 downloads during that week. So that's definitely no small number. You know, I talked to the guys that run the Humble Indie Bundle, and I was hoping to get some advice on what they're really looking for whenever they look for content. And basically the answer was simply, we want awesome games. So if you believe you have an awesome game, please contact them. They're also very, very excited to start getting Unity content in their bundles. So that's it for distribution platforms. Before we finish up, there are a couple of caveats with the feature in Unity 4.0. The first one is we do not have a screen selector. There's a technical explanation for this, but the end result is that means you have to use your own input manager, because otherwise you don't have a mechanism for setting what the key binding should be. There are command line options that let you set like default height and default width of the window and default screen quality, but the key binding, in order to be able to set the key bindings, you need to use your own input manager. And the second caveat is that currently the player does not work on purely headless servers. So even to run in batch mode, it still needs to connect to a running X11 session. But we know that this is something that a lot of you really, really want, especially for running a headless server for like multiplayer games, for example. So that is definitely something that we do plan to fix, but it doesn't work quite yet. Yeah, I think that's it for caveats.
Yes.
So, any questions?
All right then.
Okay.
Shall we move on to Flash?
Awesome.
Hello. So, last session of the day, you're probably standing in the most schizophrenic session of the entire conference, because the first half of this talk is about Linux, and the second half will be about Flash and all sorts of technical stuff. Has anyone here used the Flash exporter? A few hands. How is it? I'll take that as a compliment. Different hole. Does anyone know how this works? So we started the Flash exporter a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and we're about to like release the first version with Unity 4 that we really feel like confident with. Like we did a public preview with 3.5. Haha, I know this. We did a public preview with Unity 3.5, and there we go. Can I get the screen up, please? So now with Unity 4, it's like the first version that we really like, that we feel comfortable with saying that you could really ship real titles with it. We're quite happy with it. Is this what we're up? Oh. I swear I tried this. Maybe I should say a few things first about like how like the ecosystem for the Flash export works these days. Actually, Natasha, could you help me solve this so I can talk and don't waste everyone's time? So in the old days, everyone could just publish the Flash and you put it on a website and it worked. Adobe is changing the model for Flash a bit, where they actually, where in some cases they will take a rev share from your Flash content. So for developers, that's not great. Actually, I would need the VM to show up. We had it right when we were testing. So for the developers, of course, they don't. Oh, great, thanks. They don't really like that. However, the good news is that for most use cases of the Flash exporter, you actually don't need to pay any money at all. Like, if your content is not directly monetized, so it has no ad banners or like no in-app purchases, then you don't need to pay any money. If you make less than 50K, you also don't need to make any money. Like the Adobe guys are right around the corner here. They'll be able to answer all your questions about the details. So like if you make like I don't know, if you work for an ad agency and you want to make like a driving game for Volvo, like the Volvo would not have to like pay out 9% of all the sales of all the Volvos in the world. So that said, Unity can generate Flash, SWIFTs, and I would like to say a few things, like give you a few tips of like of how to get the most out of it, and also show you a bit of how it works under the hood, because like at Unity we always try to make it so that when you that it just works, but we know that when like real developers get really down and dirty with it, like almost developers will always hit the limits of what we provide. And I'm hoping that by showing some of the things like how it works under the hood, that you'll be able to understand why things are the way they are, and that you'll be able to better understand how you can best generate content with the Flash exporter. So I actually wanted to start with giving a bit of the overview of how technically it works. So the Unity runtime, the one that the Linux player runs on, and the Flash player, and the standalone player, it's a C++ program. Like many, like when we go to game development shows, often people come to us, hey, Unity, isn't that C# engine? And we always go like, because it's not. Like Unity itself is written in C, C++, and handwritten assembly. That's all that the Unity player is. The only place where .NET code, where C# code comes into play, is like the code you write. So by bringing our Unity player to Flash, what we had to do is actually take our C++ code and somehow make ActionScript of it. And then a separate problem is that we also need to take your JavaScript code and your C# code and somehow make ActionScript of that, and then glue it together and then put it in a Swift. I'll talk a bit about how the C++ side of that works. So don't tell anyone, but this is the Unity engine source code. This is our camera class. Of course, it's way more messy than we like it to be. And there is a function here like camera render skybox. like this is what inside of Unity looks like. There's C++ files. This one's about the camera, and we need to somehow take this CPP file, take this CPP code, and turn it into ActionScript code that does the same. Turns out there's this super cool project called LLVM. I actually don't know who made it. I know Apple threw some money at it at some point and is now using it, some university somewhere. It's open source, and they made like a sort of building blocks for making compilers and like low-level machine building blocks that help you write tools like this. So what we did is actually we took the LLVM compiler that will take C++ code and compile it into LLVM bitcode. And then we wrote a LLVM backend that translates the LLVM bitcode into ActionScript. So just to give like a little bit of an idea of how that works, like this render skybox, if you go to the ActionScript here, actually this is probably funny to mention, this is the ActionScript file that we generate internally in Unity when we build. Notice that the line number is like 866,503, and notice the scroll bar over there. The scroll bar is not halfway yet. So my life for the last half year was been looking at error messages like compile error in line 1,200,044,335 duplicate variable definition error. Really. Also, like in order to compile this like 1 million plus ActionScript file, it takes about 6 minutes, and this is why the Flash team is so active on Twitter. Here we are. Oh, this is camera render. I mean, it's a different function, but it kind of gives the idea like, so every C function, we turn it into an ActionScript function like this. And you see, like, you get this really, like, funky, like, ZN6C, like, the name is sort of garbled. That's just because that's the way C++ compilers deal with turning, like, C++ names with the namespace and all that stuff, how they turn it into a flat name. So this just means, like, it's the camera class. The 6 means that there's 6 letters in the word camera, and then 6 because there's 6 letters in the word renderer, and then we'll have, like, the arguments in the name. Then we'll have a bunch of variables in this function. I guess this one has quite a bit. And then we'll do code like, you know, we'll read an int from memory, and we'll read a float from memory, and then we'll do an if. Like if the float is smaller than almost 1, and then we jump to somewhere else. Actually, funny story, turns out that when you translate code to LLVM bitcode, it becomes really, really simple. Like the amount of operations that your backend language needs to support in order to run this code is like you only need plus, minus, multiply, divide. You need to be able to read and write into memory, and you need to be able to do goto. Flash doesn't have goto. Shit. So what we do, we put in these labels like UPP replace .ulabel and UPP replace like these guys. These are actually sort of like fake method calls. This UPP replace is a class that we made, and in the Swift that you generate when we compile this, it doesn't work because we have all these fake method calls, and because ActionScript doesn't have goto, what we do is like we compile this code. And once it's in a Swift, we actually dive in the Swift and we go looking at all the bytes because the Flash player actually can do gotos, but the language doesn't support it. So you need to go into the ActionScript bytecode and replace these sort of fake tokens that we put in and replace them with the with the AVM2 opcodes that actually will do the goto. The same for reading and writing to memory. All this stuff you see here, read int, read float, all that stuff doesn't actually work in ActionScript, so we make this fake method, and then we operate on the actual, Flash bitcode. It's also the reason why, some people have tried to, how do you call it? Like, you have like these Flash decompilers that try to reconstruct the original ActionScript code. and everyone thinks like we like purposely obfuscate our stuff. That's not true. They just crash on our, they just crash on all this stuff that we're doing. So anyway, so this is what a C++ function exported to LLVM, exported to ActionScript kind of looks like. It's kind of repetitive. You see these if statements, jump statements, if true, and then sometimes you see a function call here, and then at the end there's basically just, oh, this is a really long one. Actually, you notice this is a super long one, and the reason because of that is that LLVM is so awesome that you can tell, like, it has a knob for how much you want it to inline, like how much you want like functions to inline, and we take that knob and we put it on overdrive, because turns out in Flash a method call, like a function call, is really, really, really expensive compared to other stuff. So we tell LLVM like, okay, whenever you can inline something, please do, and that's the reason why, while we had a small C function to begin with, that function did 2 method calls, and LLVM actually inlined all that stuff, so now you have a really big one here. Okay, so we compile this, and then that's all kind of nice. But then there's a story of how the hell we actually convert your code, because you write C# code. Let me show some code for that too. Erase, maybe this is a good example. So the pipeline of converting your code is also it's kind of insane. When you write JavaScript code, we compile it into, we use the regular JavaScript compiler that we wrote to turn it into .NET bytecode. Then we read the .NET bytecode and we reconstruct the C# code that would have generated that same bytecode. So we go from JavaScript to .NET bytecode to like an in-memory representation of the C# program. And then we take that in-memory representation of a C# program and we start changing it. One by one, we do small operations on it to remove the usage of a certain language feature. For instance, Flash does not support overloads. An overload is like a method, like having 3 methods with the same name but with different arguments. You can do that in .NET and in JavaScript, but in Flash you cannot do that. If you make 3 methods with the same name, you're going to get a compiler error. So what we do with this in-memory C# representation is we rename all the methods to have like the type of their arguments in the method name, so that this C#, what used to be like a C# program, no longer relies on the language support of being able to have methods, multiple methods with the same name. And we do this all the time. We have like, maybe I can find it, like the pipeline. Here, these are all the steps. Like each line you see here is a single modification step we do on this in-memory C# representation in order to rely on fewer and fewer and fewer language features. So we do stuff like, like erase events. Events is like a .NET thing, like some delicate thing with on, and you can plus is it. I never actually use it, but it turns out you do. So we have to actually, when you do, we actually go in and change your code to no longer use that language feature, but have the same behavior. And that's the challenge, like for our team, all the time. We need to change, we are constantly changing your code in order to make it behave the same, but not use a certain feature anymore that is not present in ActionScript. For instance, like things like generics. Like in Flash, there's no generics, but if you write generics code in your Unity project and export it, it does still work. So there's each single step here. Actually, this file just goes on and 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 on. And then at the very end, we end up with a program that relies on so few language features that you don't that it's hard to call it a C# program, because at that point, if you just write it down, as a ActionScript program, turns out it actually compiles. So let's take a look at an example there. For instance, this is the Angry Bots project, and it has a script called camera control. It looks like it's a JS file. You know, it has some variables. It has function start, log. I mean, this looks like your like a very normal Unity script. If we publish this to Flash, actually, I should probably show that. If I am in Unity here, and I go to the build settings, by the way, when you work with Flash, always do development build. If you do development build, it will like shave 3 or 4 minutes of your build time. It will make the file size 3 or 4 times as big, but like if you're iterating, like development build is much, much, much faster, and you get actually line numbers in your stack traces and stuff like that. So if I hit build like this, it's gonna actually take a while. And I'm gonna pretend it's done. Oh, it is. And then it's very good to know that, like, I built this test Swift here, but the really interesting part is actually in the temp folder. Because in the temp folder, what we do is all the steps we did and the code we generated to make this Swift, like all the ingredients, we just leave them on your hard drive so that it's easy for you to inspect like the code that was actually made, and that it's easy to figure out like what was actually happening there. So if you go in here, you will see that there is a folder called converted.net code. And it will have some stuff like this. And you'll see that there's like an AS file here for every JavaScript or C# class you had. So which script was it that we were looking at? Camera control something, right? So here, camera control AS. If we take a look at that, I have it open here. Whoops. You can see the output of this process that I just described. We have to import all these types, and then we have public class, camera control, you know, some variables. If I switch back to the original, you know, you can kind of see like each variable that we had here still has its own thing here. Like we gave it these funky names with these how do you call these? String $signs. I'm not sure actually why we gave it the strange names. Oh right, we have to like, so this is another like ActionScript limitation. We rename your fields to have the name of the class in the name because there was something that didn't make that work. Yeah, it's the problem if your base class also has that field name, like that would conflict in ActionScript, but not in C#. Stuff like that. It's a bit sad, or like it's a bit sad in a way that like your code started off really elegant, and that when we're done with it, it sort of looks like wow, like who put that thing in the blender? But you know, like it's actually still reasonably okay. Like you can still figure out what's going on. Like this is a start function, calls some function with a debug log, and then it sets the offset player. Like if you look at the camera control, you can see, I mean, you can see that that's kind of the same. So is this process perfect? This .NET to I would say the C++ to ActionScript conversion is pretty much perfect. I haven't found a bug in that in a very, very long time. This .NET or JavaScript and C# conversion to ActionScript, is it perfect? It's not perfect. Like there are things you can do in .NET that we don't support yet bringing over to ActionScript. Like the most radical ones I can think of is that most things you want to do with reflection don't work yet. But it's starting to actually get really good. But sometimes, like if you do a real big project, it's almost inevitable that at some point you will hit a construct in your code that does not cleanly convert to ActionScript. And when that happens, there's few things that can happen. Either when the ActionScript code gets compiled, you get a compile error, or maybe it compiles fine, but when it runs, you get a runtime error. The good thing is, like, with a compiler and a runtime error, you get a stack trace with line numbers. And because we leave the converted ActionScript files, we leave them in your temp folder, you can actually go in and see what the hell was going on. And very often, very often, then at least you see like where it goes wrong, and at least you have like a starting point to try to figure out like, oh, maybe, maybe it doesn't like it. Like, there's something like if you have a out argument of like a multi-dimensional array, and an element in that, if you try to modify it with ++ instead of plus is 1. Like, we'll have corner cases like that might actually give a compiler as like, but the good thing is that you actually have pretty good tools to figure out where it is, and then to like, you'll have to try a few times to see like exactly what is annoying it, and it's usually super easy to just not use that. Like, if you run into something like that and it's a problem, please send us a bug report, and we usually fix it pretty quickly. But in all, like, I suspect actually most people won't send me a bug report because it's usually just very easy to change your code a little bit so that it works. And then in the end, we compile this ActionScript code as well. We glue it towards like the ActionScript code compiled from the C code, and we generate a SWIF on it, and then in the SWIF we have to do this bytecode manipulation. And there's a few more things, a few more tips for like being successful with the Flash exporter. And one of them is that not only do we leave the code in that we generated from your .NET code, if you look inside your Unity folder, where do I have it here? Here. There will be a folder Flash Support, and there will be a folder Build Tools AS3 API. And in that folder, we actually also have the source code of our API, like of our managed API layer that we provide to you. So like, it's a very good source of information to just look through the code, just to understand like what is really going on. For instance, if you write something like transform.rotate 1 to 3, like the code that you call is actually in transform.as, and you can actually see the source code of that file. If I look here, you will actually find the function transform rotate vector 3. And you see that this function calls this other function, and this other function does a few things, and then it sets the dot rotation on this thing. And you'll see that like this is like in Unity Engine DLL, that's like our .NET wrapper to our C code. This is the converted ActionScript code of that, and it is actually this file that will call into the generated C++ code. So yes, two things. We make sure to look at the ActionScript code that we generate for you. Make sure to look at the ActionScript code we generated for ourselves. And that should give you a pretty good idea of what is actually going on. There's a few more gotchas. Like for instance, when it comes to performance, there's a few things that really do not look slow if you program them, but in the Flash exporter, they are unfortunately very slow. Every call that returns an array, for instance, is slower than it is in .NET. For instance, if you want to do if you do get texture.getPixels, what is it, getPixels 32 or something, and you get like an array of 10,000 things back, those kinds of operations, while they're fast in .NET, they're actually slow on Flash Player, and you should expect expect that it will take a little bit of time to get like a feeling for this exporter of like the things it does well, the things are fast, the things that are slow. I am personally incredibly impressed with how fast. I'm actually surprised it actually works at all, honestly. But after we got it working at all, the fact that it runs so fast is I'm just very surprised. Because when we started, we actually thought, oh, Flash is going to do this 3D stuff. We should make sure that, with Unity, you should be able to, at least be able to export a scene, and then maybe code it up yourself in ActionScript. We were actually never planning of porting over the entire engine like this. A few more tips. You can actually. Normally, you put JavaScript and C# scripts in your assets folder. You can also put raw ActionScript files in your assets folder, and you can call them from C#. So obviously, like, since this is one of our first releases of the product, like, we don't have a Unity API to cover all of the things that Flash can do. Like, with Flash, you can, like, start a webcam, like, for instance, starting a webcam. We don't expose a Unity API to that, but it's super easy for you to just write some ActionScript that does it. Like, I think the syntax for it is something, you just write flash.actionscript.statement, and then here you can just write a string like flash.utils.webcam. I have no idea how this Flash thing works, but something like that. Maybe they have a function like that. Like in here, you can just write raw ActionScript. And when you build for the standalone player or in the editor, we just ignore this. But when it runs in Flash, it actually invokes this raw ActionScript. Obviously, like, writing a zillion lines of ActionScripts in this construct is annoying. So what we do is, if you create a folder called ActionScript in your assets folder, and you put the AS file in there, you can just call that AS file from a line like this. And the same works with Swig files, for instance. Let's say, like, you have some, some third-party web service analytics service that's very focused on, like, catering to Flash developers. They will probably provide a Flash API, maybe some Flash source files, or maybe like a Swig file. If you want to use that from Unity, just put the Swig file in your assets folder, and you can just call the functions like that, just like as you would do it as you were in Flash, and you can consume everything like that. How much time do we have left? What time is it? Is it 6 already? 4:20. Yeah, maybe, are there any questions so far? Is it too technical? Should I talk more about the tech stuff or more about using it? Like, who wants to go deeper into the tech stuff? That's quite a bit. Yeah, but we kind of already went kind of deep in the tech stuff. Any questions so far? Yes?
Hey, will DLL files will be supported?
So the question is if DLL files will be supported. Good question. So the answer is yes. You can put a pre-built .NET DLL file in the assets folder, and we convert it just the same. However, the code in that DLL file is subject to, like, the same restrictions as the C# code you would write. And in practice, what happens a lot, the third-party DLLs that people like to use, they actually, they were not written with, like, the Flash exporter in mind, so they are more likely to use constructs that are not supported. But for instance, like, one of the client projects, I was helping them out last week, they have, like, an assets folder with, like, 60 pre-built assemblies, and they all convert to Flash. So as long as you make sure that the code in there, like, also converts nice, there's nothing wrong with having it in an assembly. Can we get the mic on? The audio mic?
Yeah. Oh, so I have another question. What about networking? We have projects with network, but we can't really export it to Flash because it doesn't work.
So the story with networking,
like photons.
Like photons. So obviously, when Unity content runs in the Flash player, it is subject to the same security restrictions as any other Flash content. What I see a bunch of people doing is that, like, out of the box, for instance, like our RockNet networking, we didn't bother to port that over to Flash. What we thought was, there's all these networking libraries for Flash, that Flash games use to do multiplayer stuff. We should just do this. Like, make sure that you can really easily interoperate with ActionScript code, and then you can consume any ActionScript networking library out there. I would assume, I'm not sure actually if the Photon guys did it, but I'm pretty sure there's like 1 or 2 networking solutions providers already that actually, that already used to have a Unity solution and a Flash solution, and that are now fixing up their Unity solution to make, like one Unity package with like a if-def, and then like if they're not in Flash, they will use the normal .NET stuff, but when they're in Flash, they will actually call out to their ActionScript-based implementation of their networking solution. So yes, you can definitely do multiplayer games and networking, but you will need to use an ActionScript-based networking library. Yes?
I have two questions, pretty simple. One, you say the whole Unity engine's in the Flash Swift build. So first question is, how big would that be with no assets, just to begin with? And the second question is, if you have C++ plugins in the plugin folder, will that still get converted to AES as well and be all right?
Okay, so question one, like what's the minimal file size of like an empty project? I haven't tried in a while. I think by now we are at 1.7, 1.8 megabytes. But maybe because Unity 4 has so many great new features, it might have grown to 2. But it's in that range. It's somewhere between 1.5 and 2.5. And my guess would be that it's around 2. How much is it? 1.2? Really? Oh, because we made it so you can strip out physics. Right, so we made it so there's a checkbox when you build that can say like no physics please, and then it actually becomes 1.2. I mean, we're constantly actually working to try to make it so that you can strip out more components. But actually that's a good question, like should we spend more energy in making it smaller than 1.2 megabytes? Or should we spend our energy on making more features? Like who really cares about making it even smaller than 1.2? Two guys? Who doesn't care about it? Because I mean, the other thing is like, if you, that's like 1.2 megs, that's maybe like 3 decent textures. 5 maybe, but like if you start adding especially because you are likely to use it for like a 3D product, yeah, I mean, I've just been wondering, like, do people like how small does it need to get before people to really be happy with it? And your other question was, right, C++ plugins. No, if you have a C++ plugin that does not convert into ActionScript, the reason for that is because it would be a lot of work, and it would probably not give you what you want, because the reason most people use C++ plugins is that they want to actually talk to some system-level service. You know, they want to like make their own sockets or put files on the hard drive or talk to your audio card, and that stuff doesn't work in Flash anyway. So like most of the use cases where people would use C++ plugins won't work in Flash anyway, and it would be like an enormous mountain of work for us to do. So like we have no plans on supporting C++ plugins like that. Like the plan is actually, or like the alternative is that we thought to do this and figure out, well, you can actually have ActionScript plugins, so that anything you could do, if you happen to have a C++ plugin that would work in Flash, you could do the conversion yourself and then call it with like an ActionScript plugin mechanism that we have here. Any more questions?
I was wondering if there are any possibilities of testing this kind of ActionScript level integration from within the editor, or is this something that only will work and show up when you actually run it?
Right. So the good thing is that you can call into raw Flash like that. The bad thing is that in the editor we are unable to execute raw Flash. So what most people do is actually they would have like an if statement around this. Like if they're in the editor, they would do like the editor variant of what we have here, maybe a stub or maybe just a button that has like a fake webcam, and then only in Flash you do the real thing. Yeah, I mean that is like, it's definitely true that once you start to really rely on these things for like your core mechanics, that then you lose a lot of the iterative qualities of the Unity workflow. So it makes a lot of sense to only do this like at the peripheral, for stuff like, well, yeah, for stuff like starting up a webcam, something that you can also test your game without having a webcam, most likely. More questions?
I have a couple of questions. How do you plan to support Unity web player? Is it maybe Flash player? Will it maybe Flash player?
The Unity web player is not going anywhere.
Second question, are those AS3 files runnable on some other platforms than Flash or no?
So, you mean if the generated ActionScript files will work in something other than Flash?
Yeah, like web player or iOS or I don't know.
Like what?
Web player or iOS or.
Right, no, unless you implement like a Flash player for iOS, the ActionScript is not gonna do anything other than like decorate a wall.
Okay, and third question, can you tell us more about paying to Adobe or in-app purchase? Is it a real in-app purchase or can it be apart from SVF itself? Is it in-app purchase? Or isn't it?
Are you referring to an Adobe offering related to in-app purchasing? Or so we don't support in-app purchasing out of the box.
Okay.
To the best of my knowledge, neither does Adobe.
Yeah.
There's probably many vendors that do, and those vendors probably support like ActionScript hooks to their service, and you can consume those ActionScript hooks as described here. Does that answer your question?
I'm not sure. I maybe didn't ask right. If I have on my web page part of the web page that is not my ActionScript that does payment, is it count as in-app purchase?
Right. So yeah, like if your game is on a page where there is payments next to the game, do you still have to pay a rev share to Adobe for that? I'm not going to burn my hands on that. The only people that would be able to tell you that are Adobe.
Okay.
The good thing is they're like 10 meters from you right now. They're like right around the corner here to the left.
Okay, thank you.
So they'll be able to answer all your like licensing questions, like does this count, does that count, exactly how does it work? I mean, the thing I just keep repeating is like for most use cases, you don't have to pay anything. So there's no concern at all. But you know, like it's always smart to go check up on them to make sure that your specific use case is covered as well.
Okay, thank you.
Next question? There's one over there. Maybe you can just yell. Or we could wait on a mic. Actually, don't we have two mics? Can we have the next mic already move to a next question so that we don't have to wait? Anyone with a question, please raise your hand.
Hi. So there's a white paper on Adobe's website which is talking about ActionScript Next. And I was wondering if Unity is collaborating with them on features for the next language to facilitate a better export to Flash.
Yes, we are. For instance, like all this stuff that we do with like that ActionScript doesn't support, and then we mess around with the bitcode. Like we don't like doing that. Like we would rather just be able to write ActionScript that does it. So like on stuff like that, like we're sitting down with their engineers and saying like, well, this is kind of like, you know, this is annoying for us, this is annoying for us, and then in some cases it's hard for them to fix, but in some cases it's like, oh yeah, we could do that. So yeah, like we definitely work together like that.
I have a two-part question. Currently we are having problems in 3.5 with render textures. Will they work in Unity 4?
Ralph? No.
Never ever, or?
Not in, I think the problem is that it's a Flash player limitation. So as soon as the Flash player supports it, we can add support for it. Am I lying, Ralph? This is correct, right? I'm sorry? Let's get Ralph a mic.
Mostly readback and actually support to use the render texture. So you can use a render texture. You can like render to it, but you can't get it back to the CPU. So that's one limitation. And to use it later in like a grab pass, that doesn't work right now either, because we need to split it over. And that's also stage 3D limitation.
Obviously, that's the kind of stuff that when we sit down with Adobe's engineers, that's the stuff that we say like, hey, many of the games want to use render textures. Can you please get that to work?
We're adding a lot of support over the place where we give you better signaling that it's not supposed to work. We understand there was some confusing there, and we don't really have documentations being locked down on that. Like as we add features, we'll kind of like expand on that. But we'll have much better support for signaling you that it does not work on Flash, or like where even issues with your code are in the 4.0 release.
Any more questions?
I have a second one. We also have problems at the moment if the project gets too big or the build size gets too big. It just stops the compiling and gives us an empty Flash file back without.
Do you have the project with you?
No, but I could get them if you want to.
I mean, we'll be here for a few hours,
Okay.
but with a beer on our hand. But if you show up with the project, we'll take a look at it and we'll try to fix it.
Okay.
I must say, like between 3.5 and 4.0, things got a lot better, especially related to performance and memory usage. So like if you were having content that was going slow or that was like getting slower over time, definitely try the 4.0 beta because it's because yeah, we did a lot of work on that, and like it turns out we were allocating a crazy amount of memory that wasn't actually required. So we stopped doing that, and everything's a lot better now. Can we get the mic on again?
What physics engine do you provide in Flash?
We actually, the physics engine is called PhysX, and it's the same physics engine that we use on all our other platforms. We take the C code from NVIDIA PhysX, the physics engine that powers a lot of like all of Unity games, and we convert it to ActionScript too. Like we were kind of expecting problems there because ActionScript has no floats; it only has doubles. So we were like expecting problems with like that we actually get too much precision and that it might be different in the editor. But it actually, like so far, actually it seems that it kind of runs just like in the editor. And like I know Ralph did a benchmark with like boxes falling down, like endless amount of boxes falling down, and we did a bet on like how many boxes we could shoot before it goes down below like 30 FPS. And I think you said like 8, and I said like 15, and it was like 300 or something. So the physics is really, really fast.
Yeah, here.
Oh, let's take the mic that works.
What about dynamic shadows?
Dynamic shadows, Ralph? Yes, they work. They work.
I was just curious if you supported the new worker system in the new versions of Flash?
We currently don't use the new worker system for anything yet. However, using the ActionScript plugin API, you are free to use the worker system for like to run your AI for your bots or like to use it yourself. Ralph actually had some ideas of like that we might be able to run physics on it and maybe some particle stuff, but we haven't really went into it yet all too deeply. But yeah, I mean, I'd be very surprised if we won't be using it for anything over time. Can we get the mic on? Oh, there's one here. I'm sorry.
Hello. What about asset bundles?
They work.
Work? Oh,
yes, asset bundles work.
Thank you.
Make sure to do .unload. There was a talk here before yesterday about like using asset bundles well. Like there's a few like it's kind of like we make it a lot harder than it should be to like release all the memories for asset bundles. Make sure to dispose the .dub object and make sure to call like unload on your asset bundle. But yeah, they work. They work, and you can put streamed scenes in asset bundles as well. So yeah, that's up to par with other platforms.
Hi. Do you also translate the threads, .NET threads, C# threading?
So up until very recently, ActionScript supported no form of threading at all. So the answer is no. And we'll have to see how recently this worker threads thing got added to Flash. We'll have to see how that if that evolves enough, maybe at some point we'd be able to have some form of porting of .NET threads to Flash. But I actually don't suspect it because, because long, boring story, but look, C# lets you do more, and I don't expect Flash will allow the same. So yeah, I don't expect any threading support. Any more questions? Is anyone here planning on shipping a game with Unity Flash this year? Or let's say, in the coming year? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, that's good. Has anyone already shipped? Any brave men who already shipped? No. Okay, well, try the 4.0 beta. Are there any more questions, or are we wrapping up the conference? Looks like it. Feel free to grab me if you come up with any more questions. Thank you so much for coming at our conference and sitting out through the last session of the last day on Friday after a party like that. We hope you had a really good time, and we hope to see you next year. Thank you a lot.